The flip side of mass communication is also that elevates the ability of people to dispense and learn the truth. The flip side of that is it elevates the ability, particularly of people in power and with money, to literally create massive, endless qualities of propaganda, lies, bullshit, misdirection of every sort, and pump it out like a fire hose.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I am excited and honored to be joined by Mr. Stephen Bassett. Let me tell you about Stephen and what he's been up to. He's the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, which was founded in 1996 to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind the extraterrestrial-related phenomena. The mission of PRG was to use all means possible to confront the United States government regarding its policy of a truth embargo on the events and evidence demonstrating an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race and the formal acknowledgement of that presence. One of the first moves PRG did was for Mr. Bassett to register as a lobbyist advocating UAP, UFO, ET issues, most importantly, disclosure. He was in fact, the first person to ever do so, informally beginning the era of exopolitics. He has spoken to audiences around the world and given over 1,200 radio and television interviews, and PRG's advocacy work has been extensively covered by many national and international media outlets, including CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times. He's also appeared in numerous documentary films and lectures, interviews. They're well represented across social media platforms. And I just started watching his new show, which is streaming on Unified, I believe. And a lot of the only kind of streaming sites I enjoy these days, I'm finding him on, which is very cool. In December of 2023, Steve co-founded the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance in Los Angeles. That is a new media-centric organization working to align those working within the UAP, UFO, ET research arena with writers, directors, and producers working across every facet of the global entertainment industry. Stephen, it is a pleasure and an honor to have you. Thank you for beaming in, brother.
Faust, you medieval SOB. That's one of the best intros I've ever had. You interjected a little of your own stuff. You focused on just the key stuff, paced it beautifully. Send me the tape of that. I'm just going to run that in front of all the other shows. I'll just say, look, I'm doing my own intro. I'll just click you on and you'll do it, and it'll be great. But
thank you, my friend. I appreciate that.
We're all now professional podcasters. We're all basically Dan Rathers. Talking to the entire world, telling the truth. It's the democratization of interview journalism, which I'm sure the major powers in this world and the great governments with all their secrets is not thrilled about. But there's not a damn thing they can do about it.
No, and God willing, that remains, because they are not happy about it. You see certain legislation being passed in other countries like Australia and Canada, trying to get their hooks into and regulate these conversations. And I'm like, wow, everyone has to be very, very careful, because, once they start to get more, their claws are hooked, then we're going to be in trouble, because this is the last bastion of free conversation we can have, and it's important to have, and that's why I think what you're doing is trailblazing in a lot of ways. You're the first ever UFO lobbyist in Washington, D.C. And if in case you've been living on the moon, in America anyway, the lobbyist is the most powerful and influential way to get things done in Washington, D.C. So this is like an incredible step in the right direction, I feel. And I'm hoping you can share a bit about your journey with us. I believe that everything happens for a reason. And I know that you almost joined the Air Force, fate intervened, and you ended up studying, I think it was physics, I believe. And then you were looking for, your area until you encountered one of the most influential pioneers who would go on to write about some of these issues, Dr. John Mack at Howard. So I would love to hear about your journey and how you came into this world.
Uh, First of all, just to be clear, I was the first lobbyist to register, which was unusual and got the attention of the Washington Post,
Sure.
which wanted to know who is this crazy person. So they came out, did a pretty decent article, still on my website, big photo on the. And for whatever reason, they put it on the front page of the news section. This is back when there were newspapers that were on paper. You may or may not recall this,
I
but
do.
the front page of the business section was like the number 2 page. And so it was not an article that I was ashamed of at all. And that launched me as somebody. Now, the irony, of course, is I couldn't do any lobbying. It was 1996. I can go up the hill. I could walk the
Right.
halls. I could call up an office and say, look, I'd like to come in and talk to your legislative chief of staff, blah, whatever. And they would want to know about what? And I would say, well, it's essentially about the government's decision to embargo the truth of an extraterrestrial presence from the American people. So sorry, the entire staff is out of town on a what we call it, a team building picnic, right? So I wasn't going to get that opportunity. I did have a few meetings on the Hill. Usually they assigned me to an intern about 19 years old, right? Probably a volunteer, unpaid. And that was that. And I got that. Registering as a lobbyist as the first person was simply a way of telling the world,
Yes.
if this issue is as important as we say it is, then it should have a lobbyist, right? And so there you go. It has one. 2 years later, I launched the first political action committee. Did I raise a lot of money? No. I was going to donate to a political action committee, but I could tell all the media, yeah, got a political action committee, XPAC, which I can bring back to life anytime I want to, and I might. So, and then in terms of the most powerful people in town, there's some truth to that, but not complete truth. The lobbyist industry is powerful. It's too powerful. It should not have the power that it does. Lobbyists, by and large, the vast majority, serve corporate power.
Yeah.
Only a limited number serve the commons. And the commons doesn't have the money to really buy or pay the salaries of the big guns. And so they do what they can and they try to get their message out. And there are major organizations serving the public commons that have had some influence. But the reason that lobbyists seem so powerful is because
Corruption.
certain politicians in this town were able to achieve a situation where the Supreme Court, in the Citizens United decision, basically said that their interpretation of the Constitution was that money was speech. And so, therefore, unlimited, essentially, amounts of money could be used to influence and promote campaigns, which basically said this: you, an individual, have free speech. A billionaire has a lot more free speech than you do.
Yes.
In fact, a billionaire could have more free speech power than a billion people. Right? And thus began one of the key reasons why America is slowly sliding toward Gomorrah. This was one of the most fateful decisions of all time in the United States history, because the result of Citizen United is that the election cycle this year for the president, 435 members of Congress, about 33 senators, all the governors, not all the governors, but a number of the governors, is going to cost $6 billion. That's a lot of money. You could
Yes.
help a lot of people with that money. And all of this $6 billion has got to be raised by the people running for office.
Yeah.
So, in other words, you got 2,000 people on the ballot that are competing to get that $6 billion. And in some cases, in many cases, they will spend between 1 and 10 and even $15 million in order to achieve victory in November so that they can go on Capitol Hill and serve us with a salary of around
Right.
$200,000 a year. Anybody that thinks this is going to serve the United States' common good and the future of this country is either an idiot
Delusional.
or absolutely venal and corrupt. And until we fix that,
Yes.
being a lobbyist is no, how would you say, noble label. And I knew that when I registered as a lobbyist, that like being the first
Yeah.
lobbyist on this issue was kind of cool, but being a lobbyist in general was not cool. All right. But again, that was the system. Now,
Yeah.
to my credit, I was the poorest lobbyist in Washington, D.C., I'm pretty sure, completely unpaid, no salary, working off minimal donations for years and years until it began to get enough of an attention that people started supporting me. I did not file as a 501c3. I regret that I didn't do it. I had my reasons. Circumstances did not lend itself to that. Uh, I have now done that. I'll be a 501c3. PRG will be within a number of weeks. And I'll be able to raise funds
Nice.
as a nonprofit. Now, that's as a nonprofit think tank,
Right.
not as a lobbyist. I will be a political activist on my own, but PRG will be a think tank, like several others that have recently been
Yes.
formed, to serve the post disclosure world. And so I just wanted to provide that clarification uh, and, uh, and let people know how these things work. Uh, Lobbyists shouldn't be as powerful as they are, but they are absolutely appropriate. In other words, you got you got a member of Congress who technically, whether they're senator or representative, may have to face and make a decision on any one of hundreds of issues of importance. In other words, there's a vote, and they got to vote on it, and there's hundreds of issues. How in the hell are they going to be able to have a uh, some understanding of what it is they're voting on? Are they going to have a staff of 500? They
Yeah.
don't have the offices for that, and they don't have
No.
the budget for that. And so, representatives of issues, lobbyists, their job is to get their attention, come in and help inform them. And so, in that sense, it is not a terrible thing.
Right.
Maybe they need to change the name because lobbying has gotten a pretty bad rep, but that is absolutely so. If you're an environmental activist trying to deal with the fact that our kids in this country are drinking lead poisoned
Right.
water, which is basically not a good thing, then yeah, you want to try to get to every member of Congress and lobby on the issue of let's fix that. So
Yes.
again, just try to put things in perspective. Thank you for indulging me on that
I
matter.
appreciate the perspective, and it was one of the things that I was going to ask about. I mean, the reason why lobbyists end up with a bad name is because they're usually lobbying for something that is completely against what the general public and what would be good for people. Because corporate
Hmm.
interests and what requires a lot of money to get people who are involved in a position to make these decisions to go against the will of the people. It takes a lot of pressure and money, and unfortunately, I talk a lot about the Citizens United and how it was really, people don't realize just how big of a crack that we put into our, principles as a country with that that interpretation, and that it needs to go. The corruption needs to be dismantled, and we need to return to the understanding that government is a public service, not a bridesmaid and to the corporate, elite who have their own agenda that has nothing to do with us. And sadly, they're not teaching our kids this. Our kids think it's normal for politicians to, enter the political field with, a net worth of 1.2 million and leave with 28 million. How does that happen? I mean, it's not rocket
Well,
science,
even
but
even if you're not going to leave with 28 million, you've still got to spend millions to get the job, right? Because a lot
yes,
of people they get the job. No, they don't enter with 1 million and leave with 28 million. They may leave with about the same, but they serve for power. In other words, all that money to get elected is because they want power. They're not all. It's not all about money. In fact, the people that stay in office and raise vast sums to stay in office, and let's not forget, we forgot one piece. When you have to get $4 million to get in office,
yeah,
you are beholden to the people that gave you that
that's
four
right.
million bucks. And so, in this case, while money may not be their goal, meaning I want to retire from Congress and be even richer.
Right.
No, their goal is I never want to retire from Congress because I thrive on power. I want to have it and I want to exercise it. And I'll go one step further and then we can get into the UAP issue. But
Okay.
the odd political discussion is always fun. If
Sure.
100 years from now, historians gathering in, I don't know, possibly China or some country in Europe are there to discuss and do a seminar on the collapse of the United States as a power, as a significant country, the history of its decline, virtual collapse. I think virtual almost is very likely that number one on the list of reasons, because you see things about this all the time. What are the reasons that Rome fell? And there are
Yeah.
many, right? And you go into it, and that's cool, and it's interesting. But it was a long time ago. Now, this could be 100 years from now. Could be 60 years from now. What is the reason for the collapse of the United States as a nation of importance? And I believe number one on that list will be Citizens United. And the Supreme Court justices that voted there will be for all eternity disgraced. And I hope they know it. And I hope their families know it. It matters what you do. And there are consequences. And one
Yes.
of those consequences is to be a disgrace for all time. And I consider that pretty serious. I don't know if
Yeah.
they did, but that's the way it's going to come down. Citizens United, folks. Either fix it or suffer. Okay.
Yep.
My political lecture is over. I swear to God, nothing but UAP from now on.
No problem, man. I mean, it's a big thing. It's part of the reason why we're in the situation that we're in with UAPs and UFOs and this ongoing embargo of the truth. It is one of the biggest reasons they're able to maintain this kind of stronghold is because they've basically, you know, parceled out and hired out their ability to violate the Constitution via the corporate and contract elite. So
Sure.
it is what it is. It's an important thing, and people need to be aware of it. So I'm glad that you brought it up and we started the conversation with this because it is absolutely, essential to their ongoing ability to keep the truth from us. It's important. So, my friend, we'll stray a little farther out. I could talk politics all day, but maybe we'll have part two to this, and then we'll go deep into some of those subjects because there's a lot to uncover there too. But speaking of these, because I'm sure you are far more educated than I am, and I have done my homework on just how deep this embargo goes and how long it's been going on. And it is it makes the Great Wall of China look like a little backyard fence. It's so big and it can be intimidating. And I just was speaking to Danny Sheehan a couple of weeks ago, and we were so close to something that would have really, really, man, it would have put a steel spike into their spokes. They would have been in a lot of trouble if this 64-page version of the bill had passed. Unfortunately, the 24-page version passed, which was kind of declawed, for lack of a better
Well,
way to
let's
put it.
take a moment here, because some of your audience may not know what you're referring to. If you go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, you need to be able to spell paradigm. It's going to be a very big word in the 21st century, so get it done. Because when I formed Paradigm Research Group in 1996, over the ensuing years, I was impressed with how many people did not know how to spell paradigm.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Just one of those words that had slipped through the cracks, and that's okay, no problem. It's DIGM. But if you go to paradigmresearchgroup.org, up on the very top of the page, one, I've taken all this recent legislation, converted it into a readable PDF, so you don't have to read down through the legislative format of the way bills are written, because it's irritating as hell, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's nice PDF document, very readable. I think in one of them I've done some highlighting, so you can go there, paradigmresearchgroup.org, and you can find a nice PDF file to read of the first bill that was passed and signed in 2020, the second signed in 2021 December, the third signed in 2022, and the fourth bill signed in 2023, as well as a file for the bill that was submitted in 2023 by Senate Majority Leader Schumer and Senator Mike Rounds. You can see the bill they submitted, and you can read for yourself what they were trying to do there. And then you could read the bill that was finally passed. In addition, I have a link. It's got commercials. If I can find a link that involves a video that doesn't have commercials, I will swap it out. But right now, there is a link there to the 2-hour hearing for the Senate subcommittee, Senate subcommittee, the House subcommittee of David Grush, Ryan Graves, David Fravor. That link is there to the full video. And then underneath that is a link to the report of the Department of Defense, ask Sean Kirkpatrick, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the then retired former head of ARROW, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, to complete and submit. And by submit, I mean the DOD called in a very select group of journalists who I guess they felt were going to cover it straight, which they did, and put out to the world, and hoping that it would spread like a virus, meaning all the other major news would go, oh, that's what's going on, New York Times, Washington Post, and so forth. And they would basically write it and cover it, which they did. But it was basically straight coverage, meaning this is what they said. Now, the next phase is for other papers a little bit later to then start doing articles that spin off of that. Meaning, okay, that was done. This is the report of that. This is a news coverage of that article. Now let's put out some news articles which spin from that, which kind of react to it and so forth. And then the Department of Defense is thinking that will spread and get worse until, my Lord, the world will go, oh, no, this
turns out there's nothing.
There's nothing there, like in 1969, and they'll all be free. And so I also have a link to this 60-some page report, technically authored by Dr. Kirkpatrick, and you can get to it by clicking on a little pile of poop.
Yeah, I saw that. I love that touch. I was like, yes,
So
I
it's all
saw that
there.
on
So
the
right
website.
there, you
Yeah.
can get a real good handle on this. Now, so I just want to know that. So now your viewers know kind of what we're referring
Thank you.
to.
Yes.
Something has happened recently that somehow ended up being linked to by a pile of poop. So let us continue.
Well represented with the poop emoji,
Yeah,
because everyone who's been following along as closely as some of us has knows that report it's an insult to the intelligence of everyone who has been paying attention. It's
pretty
a
much.
flagrant in it and belligerent in its denial of the facts that have been presented. And like most reports that come out of a government body that's supposed to be reporting on its own ability to investigate things, not so honest. So that's my comment on that. You know, I keep trying to encourage everyone to understand how significant disclosure is to where we need to go as a society. And even though it's not apparent to most people what's missing in this society we live in, if they knew what has been suppressed and hidden, if they understood the implications it had on our daily life, and in fact, the way that we understand our life on this planet and life in this galaxy and universe, then it would be a much, much greater issue, particularly as we move into another election cycle, without everything being talked about and them creating the conditions of the same old crisis and conflict and war, for us to, bang our heads against the wall against. Meanwhile, this is all going on, under the surface of things. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that and help me convince the people who are listening that this is an issue that they need to start paying attention to, that the consequences of it are much bigger than they imagine.
Sure. I think I think the fall of Rome, one of the great empires, of course, of the ancient world, I think it's fair to say that, based upon my reading, this hasn't been extensive, and some excellent movies, that the Roman people did not understand or realize how their empire was collapsing. They didn't know that their time was short. That pretty soon it was over, and Rome would be sacked, the empire would implode, and there would be a lot of suffering. I don't think they knew it. I think they were, well, first of all, there was no internet then. It was a lot harder to get information. Okay. Uh, there were no newspapers. There was nothing really other than word of mouth. And occasionally you'd be called together in a forum and listen to somebody speak from the top of a staircase. And there really wasn't the kind of access to information we have now. So I don't want to criticize the ancient Roman people unnecessarily. They just didn't know until it finally arrived. And then, of course, it was too late. And there's a fantastic painting. I should know the name, and I should know the painter's name. I don't have it, but since I'm going to be using that, I guess, from time to time, I should find that out, and I will. But most people have seen it and don't know it. But it is an extraordinary painting, and I think it's called The Fall of Rome, and it's really scary. Okay, so that was then. Well, now it's 2024. We got communication satellites, instantaneous communication, virtually global on by phone, and by encrypted phone like WhatsApp and Signal. We have automatic translation software that you can actually put in. You can turn it on, right, so that when emails come in, Google, well, I say Google, my email, which I get through, basically it's Microsoft 365 email through GoDaddy. Anyway, I can turn on a thing that automatically translates it. So if it comes in Spanish, it just translates it in English for me. with all of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of course, we have newspapers and we have the websites. We have communication beyond, just completely beyond anything people could have imagined even 100 years ago. So the idea that the fall of the great human experiment, or the great modern human experiment, the fall of even the United States, could sneak up on us and we'd go, what? What?
Yeah.
Even the people in Pompeii had a decent warning about Vesuvius. The damn thing kept, doing its thing and shaking
Mm-hmm.
and whatever. This went on for some time. They had a chance to go, there's this giant mountain next to us, and the thing really acts up from time to time, and it scares the hell. We should probably move, but no. But even they had, some warning. Is that conceivable? Yes. And that is something I think the historians will spend a great deal of time discussing if things go really bad, is how in the hell did 8 billion people not see it coming? How is it they didn't get informed or weren't able to figure it out on their own and take action? They just kind of continued about their daily life where things slowly decayed to the point where everybody got screwed.
Yeah.
And it's in the case of Rome, it's not that difficult, but in the case of the modern civilization of the 21st century, it's a phenomenal thing. And I think the historians would be very, very impressed. Now, where am I going with this? Here's where I'm going. The flip side of mass communication is also that elevates the ability of people to dispense and learn the truth. The flip side of that is it elevates the ability, particularly of people in power and with money, to literally create massive, endless qualities of propaganda, lies, bullshit, misdirection of every sort, and pump it out like a fire hose. Okay?
Yep.
That's one. But then, and so somewhat similar to that is it's not quite the same thing, but that this level of communication has allowed the fundamental, very human act of lying to become an art form. Lying is now a highly developed, sophisticated art form that, again, it's quite extraordinary and on a broad scale. It's easier to lie on a broad scale than it is on a person-to-person basis. Your typical marriage where one spouse is lying to another, they're kind of limited in a lot of ways. It's very close up and personal, and it can easily go badly, right? Okay, but when you expand to the grand scale, lying, incredibly effective. You may not be able to convince your spouse or get away with a lie with your spouse very well for even a month. But at the grand scale, you can get away with lies for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And thus is the conundrum that we face as the advanced global civilization, 200 countries roughly, and 8 billion people. So, with that as preface, here's a way to look at it. The two major world wars of the 20th century showed a lot of very smart people, particularly politicians, military leaders, and what have you, that the key to war in the modern era was intelligence.
Yep.
Right? It was intelligence. Yeah, having a little better weapon, good.
Sure.
Maybe having more troops, good.
Bigger
But
bombs.
intelligence,
Yeah.
secrecy,
But intelligence. Absolutely.
this was the key. People have read and heard about, there's been a couple of movies about the cracking of Enigma, the German encryption, and also the cracking of the Japanese system
right.
of communication, right? And the truth is that one could say that the Axis powers were essentially had lost the war at the point that we cracked the Japanese encryption system and the German encryption system. After that, it was just a matter of playing it out.
That's right.
And so when World War II was finally over, there was worldwide an absolute commitment to perfecting intelligence, secrecy, spying to an art form. Literally, as far as you could go. No amount of money would be spared. In the United States, we passed the 1947 National Security Act.
Mm-hmm.
Similar things were taking place in China and in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And in the UK, pretty much every major nation. And so thus began, right after World War II, what had sort of existed prior to World War II, but really went first class.
Yeah, top priority.
Is a massive global national security structure built on endless secrecy that has grown steadily since that day. And so essentially we're talking about 79 years of the growth of vast intelligence systems, technology, secrecy, underground unknown facilities, levels of classification, and on and on and on. It's another world.
Yes.
Right? You know, I'm a baby boomer. I was conceived just 6 months after the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I was born just 6 months before Roswell. So I've lived my entire life, one way or another. Even when I was a little baby, I've lived my entire life as this whole thing was built up. The world's never seen anything like it.
No.
It is another world in and of itself. Richard Dolan has come to call it the breakaway civilization.
Yeah.
That's not bad. That somewhat characterizes it. I call it the secret empire because it's as big as an empire.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even in just the U.S. version of it, it's practically an empire. But when you put it all together, it is a massive empire. All right, and other people have other names. The number of people under classified status, meaning they have formal arrangements to operate within a classified system, protected from the outside, worldwide is in the millions. Could be tens of millions.
Wow.
The number of documents, right, official documents, the things that people and historians use to try to understand history, like the Civil War, for instance. I mean, there's been 50,000 books or so written about the Civil War because they got lots of documents from archives and people leaving their memoirs, what have you, and they've taken all that and so forth. Almost nothing is classified, really. Okay, The number of classified documents now and worldwide is in likely the billions. The number of classified programs is in the hundreds of thousands. Right?
Wow.
So there is this secret breakaway civilization, massive empire, not just in the U.S., but worldwide, that is built up since World War II. And any I think any reasonable person or historian rightfully would want to know how in the hell did that happen?
Yeah.
What would motivate 200 nations to allow that to happen? unprecedented in all of human history. And in fact, the answer is not complicated. Two fundamental reasons built this vast secret empire to a level far exceeding anything that was reasonable, beyond necessary. Two things, and they're big. They're really big. I mean, look, this wasn't some casual thing where the human race needed a hobby, so let's build a vast secret empire and spend
Right.
trillions of dollars on it. No, they were highly motivated. And by they, I mean the US, the Chinese, the Russians, the British, the French, everybody. Two things. One was magnificently represented in the recent movie Oppenheimer, which was based on a book about Oppenheimer. But there's another book that I think influenced this movie, written by the master nonfiction writer, Richard Rhodes, a lesser known. Why he's lesser known, I do not know. I think he's still alive. I'd give anything to sit down and have a dinner with this man. But he wrote a large number of nonfiction books about history. He's kind of a cross between an historian and an investigative journalist. But his masterpiece, which won the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award, is called The Making of the Atomic Bomb. He also followed it up with a book about the hydrogen bomb, which is also fantastic, but it did not win those awards. But The Making of the Atomic Bomb is a masterpiece. And if you were to read that book and read the book on Oppenheimer that was behind Nolan's,
The film,
who is a genius, by the way, masterpiece, Oppenheimer, you will get my first point. And that is that the need to win World War II convinced people in Germany, the United States, and in Japan, to a lesser degree, that they absolutely had to figure out how to turn the nuclear physics that was the understanding of which began in the early 20th century into a bomb. Thus created the race to build the atomic bomb. And we now take that for granted. It's like, oh yeah, that happened.
Right.
But you have to put it in the proper perspective. The United States had the most money. The United States had gotten a lot of the top physicists because the German government, run by a well-known individual, was screwed up in ways that were quite impressive then and even now. And as a result of that, huge numbers of top scientists fled the country and came to the United States.
That's right.
And so the very policy that was key to the rise of the Great Reich had in it, embedded in it, its doom, because they drove all their physicists away. Now, as it ended up, it wasn't really doomed for Germany. It was doomed for Japan.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, ultimately, it was going to be its doom as well. So anyway, we created the Manhattan Project, which was extraordinary. It's hard to describe how extraordinary it was, involving thousands and thousands of people in multiple locations under the most secrecy that they could possibly create. I mean, they did their best. And while it wasn't absolute, and there were plenty of spies that learned about it, and the Germans learned about it, and the Russians learned about it, and everybody learned about it. But overall, it was a program so massive that even the fact that they knew about it wasn't going to save them.
Right.
And we built that bomb. And we tested that bomb. And then we made a decision to drop it on human beings.
Twice.
Which was our version of the Death Star.
Yep.
If you've watched a lot of Star Wars movies, of course I've watched them all, every other movie has got some situation where a Death Star fires a beam and blows an entire planet up. And there's one scene where they blow up, I think, all of the planets in a social system. So billions of people die in a second. Well, that was our version of that. We built it, and we dropped it on human beings, our own species. in
And
August
we've
of
been playing the
1940.
role of the empire pretty well ever since, ironically.
Yeah, not quite as bad, but to some degree, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. And so in a few day period, a couple of weeks actually, about 220,000 Japanese people, mostly women and children, died. The ones that died instantly were the lucky ones. The ones that died later were not lucky. And that was 1945.
Mm.
We got the quick surrender, all right? And it could have stopped there,
Hmm.
all right? But it didn't. The Soviet Union had gotten information but from their own spies, and they were already testing within a few years their own atomic bomb and then their hydrogen bomb. I assure you, the new Chinese Communist government spared no expense trying to catch up,
Hmm.
and off we go in what is now considered the nuclear arms race,
Right.
which we have come to take for granted. It's like, well, that's the way it is, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
anybody born since 1945 have lived their entire life under the nuclear arms race, and so logically, they might think, well, this is the way the world works, isn't it? And it's always been
Right.
like this, hasn't it? It's normal. It's what I know. It's what I've always known since I was a
Right.
child. The nuclear arms race. Like, yeah, everybody. It's been like this throughout history. Not
Right.
exactly. No. So the nuclear arms race, which is now still going on, and threatens essentially human civilization
Hmm.
to a pretty profound degree. A full out use of the nuclear weapons would leave not a lot left.
No.
And as it's said many times, the living would in fact envy the dead in most cases. And we would be set back hundreds, if not 1,000 years. And it would be a pretty bad thing. So
Yes.
that is now fully in play as of
More than ever, more than it has been in the last
nothing of those
probably
months.
30 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So the nuclear arms race was pretty clear what was going to happen within a few years of the August 45 bombs dropped on Japan. And I should mention, and it's not irrelevant, that we didn't have to drop those bombs on
No, we didn't.
Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
We definitely didn't.
This was the decision made by Truman and Truman alone. And the reason he made the decision, and this is so relevant to the situation we're in now, is that he was given false information to help convince him to do it. This is not
Manipulation, yes.
something that is generally known to the public. You have to
No.
do a little research.
Yeah. And even
But the
then you're going to be met with
military,
a lot of resistance, when you tell them this.
the military convinced Truman that they had to be dropped on cities based on, quote, their statements as to how quickly we could get a few more bombs together, how fast we could build them, even how many we had, though that's a little less clear. But they essentially made the case that this was pretty much it, these two bombs. And once we dropped those, if they didn't surrender, it could be a long
Yeah.
time before we could have another bomb.
Right.
And it was a lie, pure and simple. Why?
Yeah.
We'll never know. We may know, but I'm not sure we will. But
Yeah.
the most obvious one, and it's not rocket science, is that the military clearly carried the highest level of rancor and the need for revenge regarding the Japanese because of Pearl Harbor. A surprise attack, though it was pretty much on our military facilities. It was not on
No, and it wasn't
clearly
so
on
much a
civilians.
surprise to certain elements in our government either.
That's right. And so it was like, we got to have that revenge. We got to drop those bombs on actual cities. And so the end of the war, which came quickly, was built on that end in that way. The use of those bombs by us,
That's
the
right.
fine American people, that shining city on a hill, the most free and righteous people on the planet, was by Americans. And we killed those people. Okay, where am I getting at? Is that we had a weapon of unbelievable power, and within a short amount of time, we knew that we weren't the only ones. We still had lots of enemies, right? After World War II, just like after World War One,
Right.
and we knew early on there was going to be a nuclear arms race, and we knew that it was going to threaten civilization itself. And so everyone in our national security structures and military understood this. And that was an enormous motivation for them to build a secret empire. You, you,
It's great
you are
cover
going
too.
to have to spy. You're going to have to do everything you can
Yeah.
to try to know what the other countries are doing. And
And
the irony of this, if it wasn't for that, we would have probably had that nuclear war. In other words, if you don't have your spies in the Soviet Union and in China and anywhere else you need to have them, and they are there at risk, because if they get found, they get executed. Right? That's the game. Right? Pretty much. Same for us. Right? So they're taking risks. But the point is that both countries wanted that spy. It may sound ironic, but the United
yeah.
States wanted the Soviet Union to spy on us.
Yeah. And we wanted,
Why?
I mean, we wanted them to get a bomb too, because I'm pretty sure that it was us that, well, when I say us, I don't mean officially, but there was elements in our government that made sure that they ended up with the right information so they could build their own program. And look at the timing of the war and Roswell, and just how perfect a cover the arms race became. And you and I both know how much money has been siphoned off from our, from each and every, president going in up to Reagan, and, you know, in our quote arms race, in our competition with the Soviets and building the vast structure of these weapons. How many trillions were siphoned off into these unacknowledged, unaccounted, illegal black ops programs that has been going on since those days. And what a perfect cover it is. The national security of America has become the blanket cover for everything that they're doing, which is, all essentially illegal. And I have a big problem with it. So I think I understand what you're saying, and I'm just, the timeline of it is just like, wow, look at that, and that, after the bombs, then we formed, we had the NSA, we formed the CIA, all these. I mean, now there's just hundreds of agencies and programs, and the money is still being. I think finally we're hitting a point where they know that, well, now we have the Space Force, and we get into some of the modern day politics of how they're going to continue this influx of money. But I just wanted to point that out. I didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought, but the timing of it and the cover of it is perfect for them.
I hear you, but I'm going to project it in a slightly different way. The point I was making is that I don't think that we wanted them to have the bomb. No, but had the bomb. They were going to get the bomb. We didn't want that, but we wanted them to spy on us. And people say, well, why on earth would we want that? I mean, clearly, if we capture anybody spying, they get a very serious penalty, up to including death. But actually, it's not complicated. But it is, if all of the key nuclear countries were not spying on each other, particularly the big three, China, the Soviet Union, and the United States, they wouldn't know what was going on. They wouldn't know
Right.
where the weapons development was, how much of a threat it
They
was.
wouldn't know who to be
And
scared
in
of.
which case they would have to speculate. And speculation leads to paranoia. And paranoia leads to hair trigger
Mm-hmm.
response, meaning, my God, we don't know what's going on. Oop, this
Right.
happened. Boom, launch the missiles. And so the spying, which was wonderfully represented in the Mad magazine, Spy versus Spy
Mm.
cartoons that appeared in every magazine, the spying was essential to maintain at least a fundamental understanding of each other's
Right. And a
development,
hierarchy
so we
of
did not
dominance.
overreact. Okay. And so there was, in fact, a, a positive reason for massive spying. But by the same token, uh, the post World War II weapons development and all of the spying required a massive secret empire. And we
Yeah.
passed the 1947 National Security Act, which launched it, and it became vast and continued to be vast and was going to be vast, based solely alone on the fact that the world, after going through 12,000 years of destruction and war and genocides and all manner of awful stuff, was still committed to that path,
Yeah.
right? And so off we go. But that would not have built the secret empire of the size that we have now. There was something else. And I believe the vast majority of people that were serving the United States in the military did not see it coming. There might have been a few that knew prior to 1947, uh, partially because of what they might have surmised from the Foo Fighter events, which were happening in
Right.
multiple areas, but which almost certainly were plasma phenomena,
Mm-hmm.
which apparently the extraterrestrials are able to work with. I mean, they're absolutely the masters of plasma.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the vast majority of the defense world in the United States by 1947 did not see it
No.
coming. And what came then is what we know. There had been some activity in 46. There was some sightings and things, but it wasn't ruffling too many feathers. And then you had the Arnold sighting immediately followed by the Roswell crash. And at that moment, in July of 1947, the United States government learned that there are non-human
Mm-hmm.
civilizations out there. An example of them, one had crashed, right? And thus confirmed that we weren't alone and that these are advanced civilizations. And at the same time, they understood that these other sightings that were being reported was in fact of this phenomena. It wasn't like there's
Mm-hmm.
one ship that turned up one day and didn't know what the hell it
Right.
was doing and crashed at Roswell. It means the other sightings that had been reported in earlier 47 and 46 and even the
Right.
Foo Fighters were in fact part of this phenomena. In other words, we're up to our ass
Right.
in extraterrestrials. And that, well, that could have gone a couple of ways.
Yeah.
And again, history, and I'm telling you, the fates of empires and countries can sometimes hinge on the simplest things. In 1947, Truman was informed immediately that we had a crash. Well, not immediately. It appears, I'm almost certain, and of course, you can always get in touch with Don Schmidt, but I've read his books. I'm
Yeah.
almost certain that the press release that was issued by the Roswell Army Air Force Base was not after they called up the White House and said, should we release a press release? For
No.
whatever reason, Blanchard decided, go ahead, Walter, put that out. And they put out an immediate press release that they had one of those things that people had been seeing, a
Right.
crash vehicle. Fortunately for them, they did not mention bodies because they hadn't gotten to the second crash site yet.
That's right. Most people don't even
And
realize
so
there was a
they
second
a
crash.
crash
Yeah.
vehicle. So, okay. But at that point, it goes to Truman. And Truman was sitting there with that information, trying to decide, what do we do? Now,
Right.
We don't know who he could talk to, what advice he got. But
I
what
can
we
only
do know
surmise. Yeah.
is that the word came down immediately from the White House
Yeah.
through whatever channel to Ramey over in Dallas, Fort Worth. You got to stop this.
Yeah.
And it was quite
Get
fast. It was
together,
all
get a
done.
story. Yep.
It's all
Take the
done in a
bodies
very short amount
to
of time.
right field and stage, an explanation. And that's exactly what they did. They worked
Yeah.
tirelessly throughout the night. They
So the
had the
decision
Roswell.
was made,
Yeah.
undo that.
Yep.
Now, Truman could have made a different decision. He
But I'm
could have
sure he was
simply,
convinced for the sake of national security. I'm sure that's the excuse that they used, to move him into this, and I think he regretted the decision because he would go on to lament the fact that the CIA and these agencies had come into such power even in his time.
sure.
And I've read letters that he's written, and things were even then they had started to slip out of the control of the representations of the people in government. So
Sure.
yeah.
So Truman, as well as Eisenhower, were well aware of the rise of what we call the secret empire,
Mm-hmm.
driven by the fact that, yeah, we built these damn bombs and other countries are going to build them. And anybody with half a brain knew exactly where that was going. So that alone was driving the creation
Mm-hmm.
of the military industrial complex. Okay, fine. They were already seeing that. I'm sure it concerned them. The ET was all on top of that.
Right.
And so, because Truman probably was already aware of the development of military intelligence complex, military industrial complex, he had this decision to make, and he had very little time. He could have simply got back to Ramey and said, "Look, let's hold off for at least 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Right? Don't respond just yet, or put out a statement to the effect that we are looking into this.
Right.
We are aware of this press release. It came out of the Air Force, the Army Air Force Base in Roswell, but command is looking into this. We're trying to see what's going on, and bought up 3 or 4 days time, and then had some time to then decide what to do. He could have done that. It's unlikely he would have instantly said no. Let's go with it.
Right.
Bought a few days, and then held a press conference and stated, "Yeah, we've got a craft and the pilots of a craft that are not
Yeah.
human made and are not human. We found no weapons on this craft. It did not appear to be a threat.
Right.
One of those entities is still alive. We are talking or trying to communicate with that entity. And
Mm-hmm.
it looks like the world is a pretty interesting place and we're not
Yeah.
alone." He could have made that decision. It wasn't out of the question, but he didn't. And
No.
so they immediately tried to close it down. They said it wasn't real. And from that moment forward, the nuclear arms race and the awareness and the growing activity of extraterrestrials, those two
Yes.
things together guaranteed the secret empire we now deal with today, that is
Yes.
massively funded worldwide with trillions of dollars, has every advanced technology possible to spy, to observe,
Unimaginable.
and
Mm-hmm.
so forth you can possibly imagine, and by and large is essentially the, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the trump card.
Mm.
In other words, whatever you think you would like to see happen,
Mm.
whatever ought to happen, whatever makes sense to happen, that those two things that built this vast classified secret world can trump it.
Yeah.
Whether that's
And
trying to be played by a president or a
that's right.
Congress or a Politburo or whatever the hell, that trumps it. It is justification for just about anything,
Mm.
and that has been our world since 1945
And
47.
how's
The
it working
entire
out for us?
well, yeah, but
Yeah.
it is ultimately leading us to our demise,
Yeah.
and it's not just that, oh boy, if we have a nuclear war, that's our demise, right? It's simply that the collateral effects
Yeah.
of that massive secret world, which the human civilization has never seen anything like it, and not trivially, the cost of it,
Yeah.
the cost of maintaining the nuclear arms race and the vast intelligence system, as well as all the proxy wars that could
Yep.
happen. Meaning, you can't have a full nuclear war because that destroys everybody. We call that
Right.
mutual assured destruction. But we can go with conventional weapons into this country and that country and war all we want and kill tons and tons of people,
Right.
right? Uh, that costs money. And so the amount of money that's been spent since the end of World War II in modern dollars has not yet been assessed that I can find, but I can make a strong case it's in the hundreds of trillions.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
try to imagine if we had not taken this path,
Hmm.
that at minimum after World War II, we said we're going to do everything we can to not go through this, and then without getting into the ET issue, huge amounts of that money would have been available to deal with the needs of the citizens of nations, and it
Yes.
wasn't spent for that, and that all that spending that did not happen has put us into a situation because we also took no interest in containing the population, meaning the more people, the better. We ended up with 8 billion people in 2024, in which a significant percentage of them are living in hell. I'm
No, but
simply
this
saying,
is yeah. This is the ultimate irony. You're talking about the ultimate irony. The ultimate irony is the greatest thing that these governments could do, the United States leading the way, would be to, and this would be really their only true shot at redemption. At trying to turn over a new leaf and start a new era that involves trust and transparency. This would be the
mhm,
first and largest step they would have to do, and that is to come clean about the lies that they have been maintaining for all these decades. And the ultimate irony is it would have to be on this subject, and yeah, it would be shocking, and yeah, it would be paradigm shifting, but it is something that is, first of all, inevitable because, like you said, it's a lie. It's, the truth exists, and most people, even if they're in denial of it, they have a sense of it, and many of them, even the skeptics, hope that it is true. But there's a lot to that, and I think what you're saying is actually something that I mentioned in my conversation with Danny a few weeks ago. The ultimate irony is the government could redeem itself if it could, free itself of the corporate corruption that has infiltrated it, and allow the transparency and truth of this issue to come out, and allow the technology in a controlled manner to come out and benefit the people. It could start to redeem itself. That's what we need to happen.
well, of course, I do agree. The getting to a point where the American people en masse, meaning the greater majority, not just
Right.
50.5%, but the greater majority can have confidence in the institutions of government to tell them the truth is not a simple path. It will involve a lot of things. However, it's got to start somewhere. All
Yeah.
right, and a moonshot, the Apollo, the Apollo 5, the Apollo rocket that took us to the moon. You know how the way it works. It starts off with a giant booster, the first one, right? It's
Right.
massive, it's low, and it's just and off it goes, right? That's what gets things off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then At some point, it's able to drop off, and you go to the second booster, and it takes a little bit further. And finally, you got a little, craft there, and boom, it goes around the moon. That's how it works. It's the same thing. Ending the secret empire or reducing it to manageable proportions. Ending the fundamental collapse of trust in government and institutions in the United States, which is strangling this country, needs to start off with a big booster rocket to get it off the ground.
Agreed.
And that booster rocket is ending the truth embargo on the ET presence. And by that, I mean this. The president finally confirms the ET presence. He needs to do that. He needs to have a platform on which to stand to do that. And that platform will be built. It's already been well under construction, but the final piece to the platform is the hearing in front of the Intelligence Committee. Mark Warner has got the call as soon as possible. Senator Mark Warner, chairman of the Senate Intel. All the witnesses are ready. Everybody knows that it needs to happen. He needs to hold that hearing, and he needs to start tomorrow. He calls that hearing, the president will come out and confirm the extraterrestrial presence. And that is the ignition of that giant booster rocket. Because once the ET presence is confirmed, then the real hearings began, and there will be endless hearings.
Yes.
In which untold numbers of witnesses are going to come before a range of committees within Congress. Studies will be advanced, but more importantly, as Senator Schumer, who went down in history on July the 14th of last year, Senator Schumer will resubmit the UAP Disclosure Act. Thank you, Senator Schumer, for calling it the Disclosure Act. I'd like to feel I played a little bit of a role in that. There's a lot of ways you can name that bill. He'll resubmit it as a standalone bill into the Senate. It will be passed immediately with everything: subpoena powers, eminent domain, the whole 9 yards. And the defense contractors know that now, which is why they panicked and pressured the DOD to put out a new Edward Condon report, only this time by Kirkpatrick, as a last-ditch Hail Mary pass, which is not going to score a touchdown and is going to make it even worse for the Pentagon. But that's their problem, not mine. All right. He's going to introduce that bill, and we will begin the UAP controlled disclosure plan, which, if you go to my website and read the bill that was originally submitted, you will see quickly that it's got it all.
Yes, it does.
In other words, everything that is needed to get every classified thing, document, person, technology, everything out over a respectable period of time, starting immediately, reviewed, either advanced or held back with explanations. In other words, not just not completely transparent, but clearly internally there's got to be explanations and revisited. And then as soon as it's cleared, it goes to the American people, and then it goes archived. That is all in that bill. The whole thing is right there. Everything we need. Okay. And so when that plan goes into effect in this new paradigm we will be in, anybody at that point would have to be insane, mentally ill, and needing of institutionalization to stand in front of a reporter in a briefing room or to sit in front of the Congress and lie. They would have to be insane, because in the new paradigm that this launches, it won't work.
No.
You lie, you're crucified.
Prosecuted.
It's that simple. And who will crucify you? The internet will crucify you.
Yeah.
The public's
and
awareness.
There's going to be illegal to lie under oath. They're going to be subject to the criminal, consequences of lying while under oath. And if they continue to do it, it's a big deal, because with each and every time you get caught doing that, the consequences become greater and greater.
But I want to go further than that. It'll be insane to lie when you're not under oath. In other words, if you're the spokesperson for the Defense Department, and we're now in the post-disclosure era, and you walk out in front of 50 reporters because something new is turned up,
right?
And you literally lie through your ass because no, we just don't want to deal with that now. You're going to be crucified. And here is why.
Yeah.
One of the reasons the truth embargo is coming to an end is the growing mass of attention to it and engagement of it by the masses through the internet. The internet and social media has created the ability of people to focus on stuff in ways you can't imagine. It's created another world. It's created a world in which influencers, possibly Instagram or TikTok, sitting on 20, 30, 40, 50, even 90 million followers, can make a single statement or post on that net and make or break an entire company, right? Change the course of history. And not everybody in that government, because they're not on the internet, they're scared to death of social media, fully understand this. They think it's nonsense. Well, it isn't. Now, imagine disclosure has happened and the world has been told there's an extraterrestrial presence. The interest and the focus of the mass internet and social media on that subject will be like a 50-mile wide magnifying glass.
Oh, yeah.
Focusing.
And
the
once you
rays
lift
of
the
sun.
embargo, then you'll have leaders of nations who want to be seen, as, they always try to get ahead of the truth. Stephen, the one of the things that we see them do over and over again is try to get ahead of the truth and then unfortunately spin the narrative. But if one nation, led the way, I really believe that other nations, rather than get their caught with their pants even further down than they're going to be, they would try and come forward and at least begin to admit to what they've been lying about, in whatever capacity they can, because they're going to be crucified. Like you said, the truth is going to come out and it's going to be worse for them. So I hope that this is the domino effect that we see.
Well, yeah, you're right. As I say, the degree of attention is going to be focused on every word that comes out of the mouth of every single body in government on this issue is going to be just so great that it would be like breaking into a jewelry store with 100 cameras in there, right, on it, looking at you, and just looking around and going, and then grabbing all the jewelry and running out the store and thinking, well, this
would be illogical.
No,
it would be stupid. Yeah,
but it's even more so. And that I'm referring to the statements they're going to make going forward, right, on the ET issue. Now, I believe it will spread. In other words, in terms of other areas, right, because the overall focus on governments themselves by the internet will be greater than ever, that the other subjects, it's going to be a little less, people are going to be far less inclined to get in front of the press or anybody else and lie right through their teeth. Now, I'm not talking, politicians may continue to lie till the end of time. We'll see. If we stop electing liars, that'll diminish. But the point is it's going to change the dynamic, and it will clearly spread to the democratic world very quickly. And now, which is to say, let me be clear, within days of, if our president goes first, of confirming the extraterrestrial presence, the heads of state of all the other advanced countries will follow suit almost immediately. And ultimately, every head of state will follow suit. Now, obviously, there's a lot of countries out there. It doesn't really matter whether the head of state, that country believes or doesn't believe, but they will all follow suit. Okay. And this new paradigm in which the truth becomes paramount, and the whole concept of lying in order to serve a security state starts to erode very quickly. So I think you're going to see a transformation within the democratic countries, the Western countries, now the democratic countries, wherever they are.
Right.
I don't think it's going to affect the dictatorships. I think they will continue to play the dictatorship game for a period. How long, I don't know. Dictatorships are founded on lying.
Yeah.
Lying doesn't threaten them. Lying is how they exist. And so they're not going to give it up easily.
No.
And so there are other factors that will be taking place post-disclosure, which may ultimately help to transform these countries. But that is way beyond my pay grade.
Right.
But let's
and that's
just
a different
talk
conversation anyway. Yeah.
That's basically the same. It's what you said, but I just want to refine it just a little bit.
Right. No, and I appreciate it. There are people, believe it or not, who have a hard time reconciling, their understanding of this earth and physics and light speed and, where we are in our technological advancement. We live in a materialist world. And while I appreciate Newtonian physics and I appreciate the material world we live in, I understand that there's a lot that we don't understand and perceive. And there's even more that's been kept from the public for the most part. And so I'm wondering, clearly some of us are absolutely convinced. And to us, it seems very, very obvious, that these civilizations are intertwined with ours. And there's a lot of reasons for that, that I hope will come out, because there are also aspects of the government that are not ignorant and have learned a lot from their interactions with these civilizations. That needs to be disclosed as well. It will challenge religion. Yeah, it'll challenge, people's worldview. The flat earthers won't know what to do with themselves. That's all, that I think is destiny. But what's the greatest evidence you have? Because you are obviously, like myself, a firm believer in this. And I'm wondering, if in all your years in doing this, and I know you've hung out with some incredible people who are at the forefront of the disclosure movement, what's the greatest evidence or experience you've had to make you absolutely sure that this is real and it's ongoing?
Yes. Let me put it this way. Well, there's no such thing as a smoking gun. And every truth in this world that is established is based upon a spectrum of evidence, whether it's science or whether it's somebody's guilt in a trial. But a simple way of putting it is this. If one, person, kind of maybe a down and out person, a street person, kind of comes up to you and says, have you heard that your house is on fire? You're going, okay, guy, that's fine. You give him $1 or something and you move on. And then another person comes up and who looks like they're a little bit more together and says, your house is on fire. And you're going, I wonder what's going on. After about the fifth person comes up and says your house is on fire, you are in a car traveling as fast as you can to get to your house to see if it's on fire. That's the way evidence works, right? So with that in mind, the extraterrestrial has been proven by a vast spectrum of evidence garnished over 70 years by thousands of people. It would fill up a gymnasium.
More.
Right. So, the people say, well, just give me the smoking gun. And then the people that fall for that go, yeah, okay, well, here it is. And they go, well, no, wait a minute. It's like, why do you think that so-and-so murdered that person last week? Well, it's a photograph of them shooting them. And the person, deep fake. Damn thing is not real.
Deep
right?
fake.
Yeah. So let's get that out of the way. But here is if you have to say, what is and I choose this for a reason. What's the most powerful evidence for an extraterrestrial presence? I'll tell you. It's the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 900,000, and we don't know the full number because it's simply there hasn't been an effort to
account for it. Yeah.
Collate this, except that Whitley Strieber happens to be the someone who did, he and his wife. Whitley Strieber was a major factor in the contact reality becoming a global thing. Not that the work of Jacobson and Bud Hopkins and others prior to Strieber's book Communion had not advanced the issue. I mean, Look magazine wrote about the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill in 1962 or 1, I think.
Yeah.
But again, one article, people go, But When Strieber wrote Communion, because he was a best-selling author, a very successful best-selling author, he decided to write about his experience as a contactee. And he writes Communion, and because he's Strieber, this is going to be a best-selling book. It was. And this came out when there were bookstores. You may recall bookstores.
Back then, yeah.
And so what bookstores do to sell a book like that is they stack them up in the windows of the store. And they were stacked up in the windows of stores from one coast to the other, nationwide. And untold millions of women, particularly women, I'm focusing women here, walked by those bookstores and saw the cover of Communion, which had a gray on it, pretty realistic gray on it. And they started having flashback memories. Boom, 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 boom. And suddenly memories are coming back to them. Wait a minute, I've seen that before. And this triggered the modern era of the contact issue. And before you know it, and because the idea of hypnotic regression was already a thing, it was done on Betty and Barney Hill at 61. Now we're in the late 80s. And so obviously that was quickly in play, and you had some of these people getting partial memories, going and getting hypnosis and what have you. And all of a sudden, the new contact era explodes. Now, how many people walked by the bookstore windows? How many people saw that image of a gray? How many people then started seeing other images and started having flashbacks? How many people had conscious memories from day one, but simply wouldn't talk about it? In other words, I remember the day I was taken into a craft and laid on a table, but I haven't told anybody about that because, boy, that ain't going to help my life at all. Well, here's what happened. Strieber and his wife, Ann Strieber, Whitley and Ann, received, I think I've heard 500,000. So I'm going to use it. Whitley would know the exact number. Approximately 500,000 letters and emails from contactees who were conveying to them what happened to them, not because they wanted to get a movie done or make some money or anything else. They just wanted to tell somebody, and so they were able to tell the Striebers privately, this is what happened to me. I want at least you to know it. And so those 500,000 correspondences filled up in their offices and in their computers. And eventually she wrote a book called Communion Letters, which refers to it, discusses it. 500,000. I will suggest that the number of researchers, and there are many contactee researchers in this world have probably received 1 million plus contacts from people privately describing their engagement with extraterrestrials.
Wow.
And maybe 0.1% of that million are fake. And so for me, if you want to say what's the most profound evidence, it's 1 million people telling you I am being engaged by extraterrestrials. And there are people out there that could read every single one of those letters and look you right in the face and say they're all fake.
Right.
Don't care. No. All right. That's 1 million letters. Right. How many people have actually had contact? I think it's in the multiple millions. So again, do I pound on that? Do I try to convince people that the ETs are here by saying things like, no, not at all. I only answer questions. Right. You see, I don't try to convince anybody the ETs are here. They will figure it out in their own good time.
That's right.
And if they figure it out, great. And if they don't, history's going to go on. My job is not to prove it. It's already been proven. My job is to get and work with others to get the United States government to confirm it, which is another matter altogether. And so I can assure you, and let me phrase it this way, if the position of the United States government, the official position of the government and the Federation of Scientists and the National Science Foundation and NASA and the Department of Defense is that the world is flat, that would be no less stupid than the position they take regarding the extraterrestrial presence. And if I am any part of that, those institutions, I would feel very embarrassed and very eager to stop that as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Amen.
It is a noble an important venture that you are on, and I take my hat off to you, my friend. This conversation has been awesome. I'm so grateful for your time, my friend. I want to give you a chance to tell everyone, what I know that you're doing a show now on the Unified platform, which is a great platform that I watch and subscribe to. Tell everyone where to find you and how they can follow along with what you're up to.
It's promo time, folks.
Yes.
Okay. It's promo time. All right. First of all, please follow me on Twitter at Steve Bassett, or you can search Paradigm Research Group. The page comes up. You can't have too many Twitter followers, and I just don't have enough, and I feel bad. So follow me on Twitter because I'm posting a lot. I've posted 10,000 posts. So do that, please. I mean, you can follow me on Facebook. I have my full 5,000 friends, but you can follow me on Facebook, and I'm also on LinkedIn, which is an excellent platform. I love LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me there. ParadigmResearchGroup.org is where you can subscribe to the PRG newsletter. All right. HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org is where you can learn about the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Check it out. Okay. ShiftStorm.org, SHIFT, ShiftStorm.org is where you can, as I've set this up, where you can learn very simply how to start sending as many tagged messages, Twitter messages, to three very important people: Senator Warner, Senator Rubio, Senator Schumer. And the message should be, we love what you've been doing. Now we want the hearing. We want the Senate intel hearing. The witnesses are ready to testify. We need it now. We don't have any time to waste. The idea that we want to wait until after this bizarre election is over, assuming we survive it, is a mistake. We don't want to wait because the threat of nuclear war is growing every day. We need disclosure. We need it now. And so and that's been up for a couple of months. I'm sure thousands of tagged tweets. And for those that don't understand, a tagged tweet, meaning at Senator Schumer, blah, 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 at Senator Rubio, yada, 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 goes in their notification box. And the notification box fills up with those messages. Yes. And so the staff will then tell the senator, you need to check your notification box, Senator. The senator opens up Twitter, looks there and goes, whoa, I'm getting a whole lot of messages here I'm tagged to saying I need to take action. That's shiftstorm.org. All right. There are some major things coming and other developments quickly. The New Paradigm Institute will become the most important think tank in the post-disclosure world, but it's now fully underway. It has some decent funding. It needs millions more. So if you're one of those high-tech guys out there that are worth like 500 million, 800 million, $1 billion, and you'd like to do something meaningful for the world and you're looking for something, there's a lot of options. Consider giving a few $1 million to the New Paradigm Institute so that it will be able to engage, not right now, which is still pre-disclosure, but start providing context information in the post-disclosure world because it's dedicated to doing the right thing. There will be other think tanks that are wanting to engage the post-disclosure world, but they don't want to do the right thing. It'll be the old same stuff all over again. So that's the new paradigminstitute.org. All right. Paradigmresearchgroup.org will be a nonprofit within a few weeks, and for the first time able to receive tax-deductible donations as a think tank, not as a activist thing, but a think tank. It will do some lobbying or activism. That is allowed. A certain portion of the budget can go to that. But most of the activism, once Paradigm Research Group is a think tank, it will be my personal activism, acting outside of Paradigm, of the Paradigm Research Group. So that's happening. Also, on May 30 to June 3, the 10th anniversary of the Contact in the Desert Conference is going to take place. It's going to be a big deal. 65 speakers, 6 tracks, once again at the Esmeralda Renaissance Resort Hotel in Indian Wells, south of Palm Springs. Obviously, if you live in Orange County or Los Angeles County, no big deal. Drive on over. They do allow day passes this year, so you can go over for a day, go over the whole thing. If you want to stay in the hotel, you'd better book it now, and you have to book it through the website to get the discount. I don't think you can even book it through the hotel directly
Yeah.
because the conference is reserved every single room in the hotel. Okay. This is a big event coming up. Also in July, the 77th anniversary of Roswell. I think it's going to be a pretty big deal. Again, because I think more things are going to happen between now and July. The MUFON Symposium. MUFON is now the MUFON it needs to be, the MUFON of the 21st century, thanks to its media program directed by Ron James and its board of directors directed by Dave McDonnell. MUFON is really going to be a force in the post-disclosure world. It's already hired a substantial lobbying firm and so forth. And so support MUFON. You can do that. All right. And they have their annual symposium coming up, I believe, in September.
Nice.
And so that's just a glimpse. I have a series up on a little show up on Unified. That's fine. I've got at least one other project that might turn up one day. We'll see. I am deeply now involved in the film industry world, the content creating world. Very late in life. I wish I had jumped in when I was 26 and came to LA in my Corvette, but I took another path. So I'm a little old to make a career out of it. But I'll tell you, when it comes to the film creation industry, it's never boring. It is difficult, and you throw in a pandemic and a double writer strike, and it's really. But I'll tell you, I'm met wonderful people, and I'm going to do what I can to. I'm going to do, and on the East Coast, it's activism, and on the West Coast, it's helping content make happen. Right. In other words, we need the industry and the people that know about the history of this issue to come across the truth embargo barrier, which is falling away, get together and start making huge amounts of content. But it needs to be accurate. In the film industry, people don't have the background and knowledge that the UA people have. And so they got to get together to get it right. And that's what is happening here. So there you go. That's my promo.
Awesome, man.
For today.
I love what you're doing. I'm obviously I'm going to be involved in every way I can. So I look forward. I'm going to send you my bio, my headshot, my resume, and I look forward to future correspondence with you, Stephen. You're doing very important work. I'm happy to be a part of it, and thrilled to have this conversation. It's a very important conversation for people to be listening to and having right now at this time. So we will be in touch with you about when this is going to come out. We're going to cut some clips for your Twitter and X and for our pages, and we're going to get the word out about this podcast, and we'll be in touch very soon. Thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are, my friend, and I'm grateful for it. And I wish you well this for everything you got upcoming, and we'll be in touch very soon.
And I am going to go on IMDb and check you out. I'm going to go on streaming. Going to find some of your work.
Check it
you out and see what a great actor you were. Fair enough?
Thank you. I appreciate that, Stephen. Right. Thank you. Okay. Take care, brother.
Until next time, Ad Astra.
Until next time. Yes. Thank you.